Hey, hey. Okay, so we are talking about day 3, or no, so day 2. Getting ahead of myself. Day 2 of the Yoga Sutras. So exciting. So, again, in your online course, you've got the audio and you've got the PDF to check out. And then in this chat, I will be doing a little bit more reading. So in case you don't have the book, totally fine, breaking it down even further. And it's live, so we get this interaction going as well. And don't forget also in the course, there is at the bottom an activity to do. And so I want to start today with asking you, who are you? If I was to just meet you randomly, or we were on a chat and I said, tell me about you, what is the first thing that comes to mind for you? How is it that you identify? How is it that you label yourself? And that is the primary topic of this one sutra that we'll be covering, this one verse that we'll be covering tonight in this chat. And this is book 1, verse 4. And so in book 1, verse 4, we are talking about the keywords are modification, assumes form or identification, and at other times. So those are the key Sanskrit words. At other time, the self appears to assume the forms of mental modifications. And so, again, this is one of these things like we have to expound on that, because what does that mean? So type in the chat, what is it that you identify? What are the labels that you give yourself? So if I was to say, who are you? Or if you were to give your elevator speech, or someone was to introduce you even, what are those key labels that people would be giving you, or that you would be giving yourself? How would you, if you were to write a little bio and say, I am, is typically what we start with. So type below, what are those labels that you give yourself? What is it that you associate with? Most people, we introduce ourselves. And most of the time we either identify as a female, sometimes we identify as being a mom, but the majority of us introduce ourselves based on our career or our job. And if we don't have that strong identification with a job, because that's such a cultural norm for us to associate with, that we then feel like we almost don't have the right to introduce ourselves. And if you've ever been there or felt that way, maybe you didn't like the career you were in, or you didn't like the job that you had, or maybe you just didn't want to tell anybody, so you avoided that. And then there's other people that I've known that have had a great career, but they introduce themselves as an artist or a writer because that's what they identify with. And so I ask you, what do you identify with now? What is it the first thing that comes out of your mind, and what feelings are attached to that? And then also, what is it that you want to be identified as? And why do you want to be identified as that? Maybe as I said that, you were like, yes, an artist. Or for me, my titles could go far beyond, but when people ask me what I do, I'm a yoga therapist. And I've had people go, oh, you're a yoga teacher. And I'm like, no, I'm a yoga therapist. And that's because for me, that is my strong identification. However, I am also a businesswoman, and I am an educator, and I'm a professional development coach and a business coach. And for some people, they might identify with those more because that might be some goal that they're working towards. I often tell people very quickly that I'm a mom because for me, that's a big role in my life. And so these are the labels that I associate with. Hippie at heart. I love this, Bethany, and a lover of nature. And I love that. And you should totally, like, when someone says, "Tell me about you," like, use that. That's wonderful. So yeah, like, how is it that you want to be identified? Um, yes, I feel that way too, Leslie. I feel like a lot of labels are so limiting. Um, and that's where I like to start this one off by saying, what is it that you want to be identified with? There are no rules on this. There are social norms, but there are no rules that say when you tell someone who you are that you have to go with career first. And this is part of the Yoga Sutras where it's saying, like, what social and family programming has been put into your mind? And that might be one that we don't even, some people might not really think about. Something as simple as introducing ourselves. Because yes, they can be limiting. And again, like, maybe you don't want to identify with your career, but that's just naturally what comes out of your mouth. Um, and I would love it if Leslie, I met you and I was like, tell me about you. And you could just be like, well, I'm a sensitive, loving human. And I would be like, that's fantastic. And knowing yourself, right? Like, this is the Yoga Sutras, is understanding yourself, becoming in control of your life, recognizing and rewriting any programming that's in our head that we don't want. Because some of it you might want, and a lot of it you probably don't. So recognizing that as well. All right, so I'm going to start with some of the reading, and we'll break it down from there. So you seem to have lost your original identity and have identified with your thoughts and your body. And this is something, sadly, where I do hear people say, oh, well, I'm a big girl, or they just identify with being a big guy, or they just think like, oh, I'm just such a worrier. So also notice what labels you give yourself as well in that department. Is it that you give yourself body image labels? Is it things that you give yourself about your personality? Do you downplay things? Do you overplay things? Do you give yourself negative associations? Do you give yourself positive associations? And so noticing what labels are you constantly telling yourself or associating yourself with. Suppose I ask you who you are, and if you say, I am a man, you've identified yourself with a masculine body. If you say, I am a professor, you're identifying with ideas gathered in your brain. If you say, I'm a millionaire, you're identifying with your bank account. If a mother with a child, a husband with a wife, I am tall, I am short, I am black, I am white, shows your identification with the shape and color of your body. But without any identifications, who are you? Have you ever thought about it? When you really understand that, you will see that we are all the same. If you detach yourself completely from all the things that you've identified yourself, you'll realize that you are a pure I. And this is yoga terminology. They'll use a capital I for pure I. In the pure I, there is no difference between you and me. And so when we're born, we have no context of good and bad. We have context of pleasure and pain, and that's it. We feel love and we feel fear. We believe that if we don't have something, if it's not available, then we cry or smile and it becomes available to us. We don't have the associations of should, could, would. All of those concepts are programmed into us. How many times has someone told you you should do something? And the shoulds lead to the coulds. And so there's a beautiful woman here in Louisville, and she does Red Tent Louisville, if you've ever heard of that. And she wrote a book, and in her book, and I've done this exercise elsewhere, but I just really loved how she put it. And her name's Amy. And she said, write down all of the things that someone has told you for you should not, and specifically write out should and not, or could not, or cannot. And write down all the things that someone has told you, and start with that big I and go with the I should not do this. I cannot do that. And get all of that out of your head. Get it onto paper. It's very therapeutic. And go back through it and cross out the not. And then read it back to yourself. Because you will realize that each one of those is simply a thought, and it can be quickly changed. Because if it's just a thought, it can be changed. That we're just holding concepts, and at any point we can put them down. We don't have to carry them. Okay. This is true not only with human beings, but with everything. You can call something a dog because it has a dog's body. The spirit in a dog and the human is the same. The same is true even with inanimate objects. There's the same spirit in a stone or a wall. And if I use the term spirit or self, you might hesitate to believe me. But if the physicist says that the wall is nothing but energy, you will believe that. Or sometimes we can say atoms or molecules. Even the atom is a form of energy. The same energy appears in different forms in which we also give names. So the form and the name are just different versions of the same energy. And according to the yogic science, such as Patanjali and even modern scientists, behind the different forms of energy is one unchanging consciousness or spirit or self. And so this is one of the philosophical ideas behind quantum physics, and theories, and theories in the realistic sense of meaning that there is proof, and they are on the edge of becoming a fact, is what a real theory is in science. So that we are this network or web of energies, and the energies are just being expressed in different ways, that we are viewing them in certain ways. And it's all the same energy, it's just close or far and all of these things. I'm sure you all know this. And it kind of takes on that mentality of like the Matrix and all of that stuff. But it really is true on a quantum physics level that we are in this web, and this web is held together by air, just as the web of the ocean is held together by water. And interesting fact that the atmospheric pressure is actually pushing air into our system at all times, just like water is being forced into the fish. The only thing that prevents us from swelling up with that air is that we have all of these systems to stop ourselves. And this is why in our yoga practices, we focus more on the exhale, because we will keep drawing in and drawing in and drawing in, and we will forget to exhale just as much as we're inhaling, and sometimes to even empty out the excess of inhales. Little side note on that is this is why it's so easy for us to become hoarders, or to take in a lot and hold on to it, because we're also doing that with our breath. And so if you find yourself being overwhelmed, you might even take in a deep breath, but you might not take that big exhale. And that's why one of those things, it feels so good, right, to scream when you're frustrated, or just to take a big sigh of relief. So I urge you, write it down if you're taking notes. Focus on your exhale. Focus on the release, because we have to make space, and we have to purge out, let go of all the things that we no longer need. Okay. And that is why if we calm our minds and get to the basis of all these modifications, we would find that the unity among everything, that is the real yogic life. So allowing ourselves to notice that we are all in union. And so this is also the yogic word yoga, or you know what I mean. Yoga means union, and union simply means that at least two things are becoming one. And so we can think of that in the sense of mind and body, or mind, body, and spirit. We can also think of that as spirit is in our energy, uniting with the collective energy, or allowing ourselves to unite with the higher collective energy, or just with honoring each thing that's around us. There's one story of a man who he was able to run he was running a marathon every month. Maybe it was even more than that. And he was doing it in dedication of his best friend. And the person asked him, and they were like, how are you doing this? Because you're older and you're not an athlete. Of course, he was then an athlete, but how are you doing this? And he said that he was running in a way not to hurt the earth. And so that when he was running, he was keeping that in mind, to not pound the pavement. And by running softly to not hurt the earth, he in turn was not hurting himself. And so he was able to do all of these things because he was almost just floating by, or going with the flow. And this concept of being in flow is now being accepted even in the business world. That CEOs and executives are looking to channel this in the flow. And that's one of the things I specialize in, and helping people realize that when we get into this servant mentality, and that does not mean servant mentality is not the same of like being a slave. So being a servant means that we're working towards a common good, that we are looking to serve. And this same concept is present in the Yoga Sutras, but to always keep in mind that our own personal peace is not up for sacrifice, that we can serve and keep our own peace and develop ourselves and have our boundaries. Because if you do not have the boundaries and you do not work on your own peace, then you're harming yourself, and you're breaking that first rule of ethics in non-harm. Okay. All right. That does not mean that we are indifferent to the changes and become useless to the world when we find unity among everything. Instead, this experience of universal unity, we function better. We will all have happy and harmonious lives, all of us. Only then can we love our neighbor as ourselves. Otherwise, how is that possible? And this is where you might even talk about if you've ever had a friend or an acquaintance that you really have a hard time honoring or seeing how they're contributing to society in a good way, right? I'm sure at some point we've all known that, with middle school, high school, a family member, whatever it might be. But if we can really honor that person and say, like, this person is deserving as just as much respect as anyone else. They have great qualities inside them somewhere. And that I'm going to honor that portion of them. People will respond differently to us. And I'm sure we've all felt that, where we're like, I feel like the world is against me. I'm not going to lie. I have some of those days every once in a while. I have to remind myself. But to keep in mind that people are responding to your energy. And I invite you to notice, if you have not already noticed this before, but maybe there was like this one teacher you had and she just spoke a certain way, or he or she carried a certain energy, and it just demanded your respect, not in a mean or harsh way, but in a loving way. Like, you couldn't help but talk nicer to them or listen to them. Or maybe it's someone that you work with. I have a couple people at my work like that. I love having a conversation with them. They calm me down just by talking to them, and they help me think in a different way just because of the energy that they hold and carry. And so you can be that person for other people as well. And that is how we change the world, by first changing ourselves. We can't change other people, but we can change how they react to us. And we can change ourselves by doing that. And in turn, by changing ourselves, you will open up their possibilities. You will empower them to then do the same. You will lead life by example. Okay. If I identify myself with my body, I will also see another person as a body. And two bodies cannot be one. They are always different. If I identify myself with my mind, no one can have a mind exactly like mine. No two individuals have the same body or mind, even twins. Even to the extent of the half-inch square thumb are not even the same. So your thumbprint. Your fingerprint experts, they'll tell you that no two fingerprints are the same. But behind all these differences is the self, and we never differ. That is the means behind these all changing, ever changing phenomenon, is a never changing one. And so this is talking about, if we identify with our body, that is when we will get to that point where we start to judge people. That is where we start to compare ourselves to others, and maybe we become judgmental of ourselves. So if you want to stop judging yourself and stop judging other people, then you have to honor that we're all the same. And in fact, in yoga therapy, it is our internal expression, our internal energy, that is what creates and shapes our external body. So if you want to lose the weight, have clearer skin, whatever it might be, that starts with an inner energy change. And that as we better process our energy and better process our emotions, and we create this internal balance, our external body will become balanced as well. And if you haven't read the autobiography of a yogi, and there's a couple other accounts of this as well, that they almost became irrecognizable. Like their entire being seemed to change as they came into that complete oneness, and really became at peace with themselves. Some of them claimed their teeth straightened, and their complexion even, and even like they might have been an imbalance in the eyes, and all of that seemed to work out, and the hair and the skin was better. And in fact, the hair and skin is the easiest thing to change with meditation, actually. There was a study from the 17 or 1800s where a man went to an island and he wanted to see the power of his mind. And I mean, this is a literally clinical study, which is kind of ironic. And he made his hair grow faster just by meditating on it. And he like did all this like clippings and studies and whatnot. And he measured it with the seasons, and of course there were some other things he did that was very odd as well. But he was showing how easy it is to change the skin, to change the hair, to change these physical appearances just with meditation, right? And so let's just have a little fun here, right? What is it that you would love to change? Is it maybe you're stressed and your hair is like falling out? I've had that happen before. Or maybe your skin is dry or oily. Maybe it is teeth, or maybe it's nails, or what is it? Is something from you, not that you want to improve it because you don't love yourself, but in a sense of you've noticed there's a problem. And in fact, again, with Ayurveda and yoga therapy, it shows us like all of our skin, even the wrinkles on our face are telltales. So here, when we get these, this is liver and gallbladder. One's liver and one's gallbladder. When we get the dark, thick crow line here on the eyes, those are typically heart problems. So there's all these different telltales. And that if we are to start internally fixing these things, that these will improve. Better, longer, restorative sleep. Oh my gosh, yes. So sleep, right? If our mind is just in chaos, and chaos can be different for each one of us, right? If it's disturbed, if there's the rippling, the ocean waves that are just the storm going in the ocean, it makes it hard to sleep. Or maybe we have a long to-do list on our mind. So that could be something that the body's fighting. And even these can be subconscious thoughts of, I know sometimes my kiddos, they've even developed these because they feel like they're going to miss out on something. And so maybe it's something we developed as a child. So all of these things, oh yes, Yoga Nidra. I love teaching Yoga Nidra. I'm actually I'm planning. So I'm going to be opening my yoga school this fall, and we'll start online with studies like this, and Yoga Nidra will be an entire course because Yoga Nidra is so powerful. And I'm a trained hypnotherapist as well. And I always said that Yoga Nidra was the original hypnotherapy. And because it gets us into such a deep restorative level. And if for anyone watching that doesn't know Yoga Nidra, they've done case studies. The yogis used to say this, they now have proved it, that 1 hour of Yoga Nidra is equivalent to 4 hours of sleep because of the amount of recovery and the deep relaxation that you get into. But it really does, it goes through the Panchamaya model, through the koshas, which is the foundation for yoga therapy. It's our psychological model. And it holds true with supporting all of the other modern psychology as well. And it really does rewrite the subconscious, and we really can reprogram the mind. And I often in hypnotherapy, when I'm working with a client and we're just not making a ton of progress, I go back to Yoga Nidra and I start giving them Yoga Nidra stuff. And normally we can get right back into the spot that we need to do. Oh, thank you, Leslie. I love teaching the Yoga Nidra. It's one of my passions. All right, so we're getting close. That one appears to change due to our mental modifications. And I can attest to this, and maybe you can too. If you've ever dated someone and you just thought that they were just so beautiful and you saw them as gorgeous, and maybe some of your other friends didn't, and then maybe the relationship started going sour and you started seeing true colors, and then suddenly that person seemed ugly to you. I don't know if you've ever had that happen, maybe even with a friend. Um, that came to me very interestingly before I had in depth studied the Yoga Sutra. So when I read this one for the first time, I was like, oh yeah, I totally get that. And noticing that even with ourselves and our self relationship, I'm sure sometimes you've thought, oh, I'm beautiful. And then other days you've thought, oh, I look hideous. And there wasn't really big of a change, but it's our own mental modifications, our own critic that has kind of kicked in. So by changing your mind, you change everything. And I've written this down on, I think, almost all of our PDFs just to keep reminding you, because the mind learns by repetition. By changing your mind, you change everything. If only we could understand this point, we would see that there is nothing wrong outside. If we can cure our jaundiced eyes, nothing will look yellow. But without correcting the jaundice, however much we scrub the outside things, we are not going to make them white, blue, or green. They will always be yellow. That's why yoga is based on self-reformation, self-control, and self-adjustment. When this reformation is accomplished, we will see a whole new world, a harmonious and happy world. And that's why we should always keep ourselves free from these wrong identifications. And this is, if you've signed up for my free meditation course, I had done a 30 days of meditation. I am is a very powerful meditation. This is also Satnam or Soham, and it's just I am, and just coming into your pureness, releasing all the labels, to-do list, everything. And I even talk about this in some of my weight loss programs, in getting ourselves, I don't like the word weight loss, but it's just such the term, shedding that literally these labels weigh us down. And often these weights and this weighing down is what makes our body heavy, because we're holding all of this luggage. And all of that luggage can cause us to eat a lot of processed foods when we're emotionally charged, right? How often do we make poor choices because the mind has gotten out of control? Because we don't feel like we're in control. Even things as far as OCD, or just these big splurges to want to clean everything and to feel like nothing is right and the house is a mess. And it's really not much different. And maybe you've had days, but you didn't notice them, where the house was a mess and you were still happy because you were internally happy. And then when we're externally, or when we're not happy, like we start blaming. We start blaming other things for our problems. We start blaming this and blaming that and saying that it's the external world that needs to change. And that is a huge practice in itself. To notice every time you get the urge to blame, or every time you get the urge of something, it's always an opportunity to say, how did I contribute to that? How is my view possibly altering this completely or a little? And even if it is something someone else did, we will still put our tint on it, our colored lens. And maybe we blow it out of proportion, or maybe we don't address it at all because we cower at that. Maybe we have a clear lens and we go, no, that's wrong. I'm going to respect my boundaries, and this is what I need to do. We can still have compassion for that person, even if they made a poor choice, because we can recognize that they are also pure and they are functioning from their own lens. And so it allows us to build our compassion in that sense as well. And we laughed and have done this right around the time that Trump was voted in as president. We were saying, like, let's honor him as his pure self and just say that we can feel bad for him. Like, because of the way he acts, he obviously has some stories that he's functioning from. And so we did the loving kindness meditation for him. And so that's all that we can do, right? Like, we can't change other people, but we can change how we respond to them. We can change how we show up. We can change the energy that we carry and that we bring and we offer in conversations. And so everything comes back down to yoga is based on self-reformation, self-control, and self-adjustment. All right, so that is Yoga Sutra Book 1, Verse 4. And it's all about how we label ourselves. If we can remove the labels, we stop judging ourselves, we'll stop judging other people, and we will be happier because we take on the path. We take on the yogic path. All right, ladies. Thank you so much for joining me in day 2 of our Yoga Sutras. We will have day 3 tomorrow. And feel free to listen to the audio and such before class or after class. There's no right way to do that. Or maybe you're just showing up to this class, and that's fine as well. All right. Thank you. Mwah, mwah, mwah. I hope you have a lovely evening.